Hi, it's great to have your company. You're listening to Life and Faith from the Centre for Public Christianity. My name's Simon Smart.
And I'm Natasha Moore.
Well, we're heading into summer, and that is peak movie season. The holidays usually involve going to one or two movies. Out at the moment or coming soon, we've got everything from Bible epics to space odysseys and the inevitable Peter Jackson Tolkien instalment. At CPX, we've been busy sampling a few of these offerings. Today, we're going to be talking about Interstellar, which is humanity trying to find a new home on another planet. Also, The Water Diviner, which is Russell Crowe's story from World War I. And then Exodus, Christian Bale, with a new version of a very old story.
Moses, Ramesses, you grew up together, close as brothers. Keep each other safe. Always.
You know something's wrong. You've always felt it. Your parents never told you the truth.
What truth? The year of your birth, there was a prophecy that our leader would be born to liberate us.
That leader is you, Moses.
After 400 years of slavery, things here have become much worse. As your brother, you must set them free.
Is that a threat?
Yes!
Natasha, you've seen Exodus. This is the sort of a lineup of biblical epics that seem to be coming out at the moment. What's this one like?
I really enjoyed it. I thought this one was visually spectacular. It's a long movie, but it's pretty entertaining. And they take some liberties with the original story that we get in the Bible in the book of Exodus, aptly named, about the Israelite people who have been in slavery for 400 years in Egypt. And Moses, this great leader, comes along and leads the people out of Egypt into the desert. So it's a really dramatic and entertaining story to start with. But I think it's really interesting that secular directors are picking up these stories and going, we can make something really impressive out of this. And we have the CGI, the capacity to make it really visually enthaining and amazing.
Well, the Exodus story itself contains within it some really memorable moments. Are those elements of the story that you know of part of this film?
The most famous element, of course, is the 10 plagues of Egypt. So everything from the River Nile turning to blood to a plague of locusts, frogs, flies, boils, hail, darkness, and finally the plague of the death of the firstborn. And Ridley Scott, who's the director, has really made the most of these. I think one of the most interesting things about the film is that even though God is very important to the story, the plagues are done quite naturalistically. So it's not simply God says there's going to be a plague and then there is a plague. Instead, we kind of see causes, and the Egyptians try quite hard to explain where these plagues are coming from and how they're nothing supernatural, they're nothing divine, and that they can fix them.
Yeah, but do they have a kind of sense that maybe this is supernatural or maybe it isn't?
Yeah, certainly. And one of the other big changes to the original story is the relationship between Moses and God. So from the first time that God appears to Moses in the famous story of the burning bush, it's a little unclear to us whether it's a hallucination of Moses at this point. And we're not given, God doesn't give him a clear outline of you need to go back to Egypt and do this, this, and this is how it's going to work, which is what happens in the biblical story. He's just kind of told to go back. And so we have these very modern elements in this version where Moses goes back to Egypt. He's been sent into exile several years previously. And he starts kind of a guerrilla war. He tries to free the people under his own strength and trying to organise, trying to get them armed, trying to put pressure on the government, trying to make arguments about workers' rights and that kind of thing. They were very, very modern ideas that have no counterpart in the original story. And I think that really creates this contrast between what is God doing to free his people and what is Moses doing, and them kind of getting their ducks in a row and getting on the same page.
Yeah, I must admit I sometimes cringe at these sort of biblical recreations, but you seemed somewhat impressed with this. How would you rate it?
Look, I think it was great. It's accessible for everybody. It's good fun. I give it 4 stars.
I came to tell you, something is coming. That is far beyond you and I. This is about Egypt's survival, do you understand? Who has been telling you this? God.
One of the Boxing Day movies this year is The Water Diviner. This is an Australian film directed by and starring Russell Crowe. It's got a World War I element to us. Simon's seen it. How did you find it, Simon?
Well, this is a really fascinating story. I'll be really interested to see how people respond to it. It's the story of Australian farmer Joshua Connor, who is played by Russell Crowe, who travels to Turkey in 1919 at the end of the war to try to locate the 3 sons that have been reported missing in action, been missing for 4 years now, from Gallipoli. All he has is their diaries that have been sent back to him, and he's heading over to Gallipoli to try and find his boys.
I'll find them, love. I'll find them and I'll bring them home to you.
Your guidebook is out of date.
I didn't come here to sightsee. I'm on my way to Gallipoli.
There's nothing there but ghosts.
Surely you were told this is a restricted zone. No, it's not safe. I'm sorry, but you can't stay.
Maybe we could help him.
You know what the chances of finding his boys are.
He's the only father who came looking.
Who's the Turk?
Hassan the assassin. Wiped out half my battalion.
We found your sons, Edward and Henry. How on God's earth did you know they'd be there?
Arthur.
Look after me, brothers, and keep my bloody head down. If this is your son, he was taken prisoner.
Yeah, watching the trailer for this one, I felt like it looked pretty traumatic, all 3 of his sons. And often with these World War I movies, it's quite heavy. Was it difficult to watch?
Yeah, in parts it was. It's really heart-wrenching in sections of the film, but there's light and shade. There's some other elements to the film which are happier.
There's a romance, isn't there?
There is a romance, and one of the things that I think is really different about this film is that it tells the story of Gallipoli somewhat from the Turkish perspective, and this I think is new. As Australians, we tend to just always think about the Australians going there and the British and so on, and what that was like, and that's important. But this film opens with a scene from the trenches of Gallipoli, but it's the Turkish trenches.
Yeah, someone was telling me recently after visiting Gallipoli that you don't think about the fact that we were the invaders, from the Turkish perspective.
And so you open the film with the Turks in their trenches, and like the Australians, they're a mix of some experienced soldiers, but lots of just scared boys who are facing imminent death. So that's a really interesting opening to the film, and it's true of the rest of the film also. You're getting lots of things from the Turkish perspective. So Crowe ends up befriending a guy who has fought against his sons effectively there, and that becomes a really interesting and important relationship, as does the love interest, the woman who owns the hotel in Istanbul where he's staying as in this search for his sons.
Is there hope in the movie?
It's a story of forgiveness and reconciliation in lots of ways. It's very moving in parts. In a lot of ways, it's a big rollicking, epic adventure story. But yes, there are moments that are truly heartbreaking. But it tells this sort of perspective of the Turks, what's happening in Turkey as the war ends and the Ottoman Empire is crumbling, and then there's sort of war against Greece and a whole lot of things that are unknown in terms of how that country is going to develop. So you get a bit of that. It's really interesting, actually. And the other part of it was the Australians and British soldiers who were then part of the War Graves Commission, who were back at Gallipoli in 1919 trying to find the war dead.
So would you recommend it as a film? What would you rate it?
To be honest, I felt a little bit heavy-handed in parts and a little bit self-conscious, but the story's good enough to carry it. And Russell Crowe's a great actor. A strong 3.5 stars.
So he he's alive?
I don't know.
But you have hope.
Hope's a necessity where I come from.
Natasha, you've also seen Interstellar. This is a big film. It's about humanity trying to find a new home on another planet. But what's the setup for that story?
I actually think the setup, you get hints rather than explanations of what's happened, but there's clearly been food wars and there's a lot of crops have failed, there's a lot of dust in the air. So people are struggling, but trying to figure out if they can recover as a civilization. And the premise of the movie is that NASA has survived secretly. There's a secret space program. And this group of people are trying to figure out if they can move humanity to a new planet.
We used to look up in the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10.
We must confront the reality that nothing in our solar system can help us.
9.
There's been a lot of this sort of genre of film, the post-apocalyptic stories and questions around human survival and so on. What do you make of that? Why are we so interested in this as a story?
I think it does tap into, in new ways, that sense of uncertainty that we have at the moment of, well, what are we doing to the planet, and do we actually know that we can survive as a species? I think recently, so in recent decades, there's been a definite shift in our culture and the kinds of stories we're telling in movies and in books, from an idea of progress towards some kind of high-tech future into this idea of, well, maybe it's all going to fall apart. Maybe we're going to have a very low-tech future where all of these things are lost for some reason.
Yeah, well, these films tend to throw up a whole lot of questions around reality and purpose and meaning. Does it have that to it? Is there a bit of depth to the film in asking and maybe even answering profound questions?
Yes, I think so. So woven in with all the science stuff, so there's a lot about wormholes and neutron stars and black holes and that kind of thing, are ideas about love and human evil as opposed to natural threats, and how those things fit together. So there's a great exchange that Anne Hathaway's character and Matthew McConaughey's character, so they're both on this spaceship heading towards these potentially viable planets through a wormhole, and they have a conversation about, well, could there be evil in the places that we're going? And Anne Hathaway insists that, evil is a human thing. Nature might be formidable, it might be frightening, but it's not evil, it's humanity that we have to dread. And I think that thread throughout the film worked very well.
Can humans, according to this film, be the answer, or is this sense that we need the answer from somewhere else?
I think really that is the question that the film asks, and it goes back and forth throughout the whole thing. So there's an element to this where the wormhole that's been placed between our own galaxy and a far distant one where there might be viable planets, they keep pointing out that doesn't just happen. Someone has to put the wormhole there, and we don't know who's doing that. Who are they? Who's looking out for humanity? And so there's this back and forth conflict between, do we need someone to help us, or can we save ourselves? And I think that to some extent, the parts where the movie is saying actually humanity's flawed and we do need help from the outside are the more successful and compelling and credible parts of the film. And the parts where it gets a bit more rah-rah, American, we can do it, humanity can fix all the problems, are a bit less convincing.
Well, space and as the sort of the frontier, isn't it? The last frontier seems to be endlessly fascinating. This is another one of these stories. Does it do it well? What do you rate it?
Yes, look, it's an absolutely stunning film. I would give it maybe 4.5 stars.
I love you forever.
Potentially habitable worlds right within our reach.
Could save us from extinction.
Here we go.
Okay, so that's Interstellar. We've also talked about Exodus and The Water Diviner. There's a feast of movie going this summer, and each of those offer the opportunity to think about some of the deeper questions of life. So thanks, Natasha. Good to talk to you about it. We'll see you next time on Life and Faith.
Love is the one thing that transcends time and space.
Do not go gentle.